YouTube, or at least we should be live on YouTube now that we got our computer struggles figured out. I swear, Keist, it wasn't me. It was the computer struggles. Something happened that something froze. Anyway, we're going to get right into how to build a strength training program. I think the first thing we got to think about, I remember back when I'm like, I was in 10th grade when I wrote my first program. My wrestling coach sat down with me. Our high school strength coach sat down, and we're like, all right, let's write our first program. I wrote out like, okay, these are the lifts I like to do personally. These are the lifts I'm going to do. This is a 3-day program. You put down your exercises that you want to do. You assign 3x10, 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 or if you're doing a weightlifting movement, you're assigning like 3x4, 3x4, 4x4 was another one I remember doing quite a bit when I was in high school. And I think that ends up being like, the way you lay out your first program. But I think that the things that you learn as you start to progress is that there's some key questions that you can ask. There's some key concepts that you can think through. And there's some just key things that you can start to think about that do help you lead to a more informed program. And some of this stuff I developed through intuition. Some of this stuff I developed through spending time with Anatoly Bondarchuk, through my college coaches, and then even learning from, learning essentially the Charles Poliquin system and like what he ended up doing. And so I think that when you start to really, really think through everything, you can get super refined and super nitty gritty. And then you can start to look at, do you need periodization? How long should you have a periodized system, or should you even have a periodized system at all? And in reality, it's like if you're looking at training athletes on a regular basis, like 4 to 5 days a week for years on end, there needs to be a plan and there needs to be a system in place to improve and to, sort of work through levels. And almost, I think the easiest way for me to think about it is like you're working through video game levels. Like literally that's what we're doing. And in the beginning, when you're thinking about your theoretical athlete, or if you're writing a program for yourself, the initial thing is like level 1's easy. You get strong no matter what. Level 2's easy. Level 3's pretty easy. Then you get to level 4 and there's a lot more obstacles. Level 5, if we're going through 10 levels, right? Then to get to like 8th or 9th or 10th level, like some people just don't make it there. But when you make it there, you have to plan for being there. You have to be ready to be there. You have to know what might, or at least have like an idea what might be there, so that you can then start to improve things. And then to take the step back as a coach, you start to think through like, all right, if I know that this athlete is a level 9 or a level 10, right, where they're getting to level 9, level 10, there's certain things they have to be able to process and get through very, very quickly. So you have to plan them. If you don't plan for that, then you're not going to make the necessary progress. And I think that that's like a really, really easy concept to recognize. And it's an easy way to deal with it. And I think not all coaches who think like periodization doesn't exist. I think there's some points where it's not necessary to in like the truest form. It's not necessary in like maybe a snapshot of like a week or a 2-week or a 3-week time frame. But like if I hear someone say like, I don't believe in it, it's like, I think it can potentially be the result of a lack of training or a lack of development or a lack of getting someone from like day one to elite level. And when you do get athletes from, 5th, 6th grade to world-class caliber, you recognize like there's bridges, there's transitions, there's points, there's frameworks, and there's things that they have to follow through. And that leads into like, well, what's the pillar of like our own system here? When I first started writing training programs, it was just sort of off the top of my head. It was, okay, these were, I think when you first start writing a strength training program as a coach, there's like the first thing that you do is you mimic the program that you're in. Okay. So that's like the easy first step. I'm going to write my first program the exact same way that my strength coach who I first trained with, or my wrestling coach I first trained with, I'm going to write my first program the same way that they wrote their first program. Okay. And I'm going to ask them and talk to them. And that's like where most people sort of stop, right? Then the next step is like, you know what? I'm going to add a day instead of lifting 3 days a week. So I remember vividly in 10th grade, we could go up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we were allowed to train at the high school for like 2 hours. So we'd go to wrestling practice and we would go lift. Okay. So my dad at this time got equipment from his high school and we had it at my house. And so I just went to my wrestling coach. I went to our strength coach. I said, hey, we've got all this stuff in the garage, which is where garage strength comes from. I want to write a 4th day. I want to add a day. Okay. So I want to do that at home. I'm going to write it for Saturday so that by Monday I'm recovered for wrestling practice and for lifting. So I went from writing my first workout basically by just emulation, right? So you're emulating as clearly as you can. Then what you do is you tend to add a day or you add an exercise and you like experiment, like, and you're still in that emulation zone. You're still like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Okay. I'm going to still follow the same blueprint that I have, but I'm going to add an extra day. So now I'm training more. And at this point, I'll share this quick story. Is like, my dad was like, listen, you're either going to work full time in the summertime or you're going to train full time to be an athlete. You're not doing anything else. That's the only 2 things that you're doing. So I got to lift 4 to 5 days a week all the time. And I would even just on those off days, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, I might have swim practice or something, but I would still lift and I would just add in those days because it was so motivating to not have to work, right? Which is funny. I often look back on that. I think my brother worked full time, and that's when he learned how to speak Spanish. So maybe I should have kept working full time. But anyway, now if we go forward, oh my gosh, I got to click on this. Now, if we move forward and we're saying, I'm trying to get Alex Rose in here. If we're going through this process and when we're talking about programming too, one thing that I think is really, really unique is now you go, okay, first I'm going to emulate. Second, I'm going to add a day or just alter something that's like a low risk. Okay. And then as you keep doing that for a couple of years, you start to get feedback. You start to feel, what other athletes are saying and what people are saying about your program, if they're lifting with you, blah, blah, blah. And then my next step was, okay, if I'm doing this and it's getting better, I'm going to do more of this. Okay. So it's like emulate, low risk. And then the next one is high volume. So basically you're like, all right, this worked. I'm going to just keep doing that. And the split happens when you start to look at, Alex, can you hear me? Okay, I'm on a YouTube live, and I want to share this. I want to share a quick story. Is that I should bring you up. I saw your request, and I was like, dude, I have to add you to this YouTube live because when I put you when we first, I was trying to share like when I first started to like write programs. I was listening on YouTube. Okay. When I first started to write programs, it was like, at my house or whatever. And when I was a young buck, right? But then when you and I started to work together, I would argue that you were like garage strength 1.0, essentially. Like I would write in like a notebook like this, Alex Rose to the Olympics. What'd you say? I was the test subject. Yeah, you were 100% the test subject and absolutely the person that I was building everything around. And so, sorry, I'm putting you so close here. And so, for me, I wanted to share, I guess my question was, what was it like when I would take these pictures of a program and send them to you?
I feel like there was an understanding that it was like a work in progress, right? Like how are we going to do this remote programming? How am I going to do a year-long, periodization where you're doing something with the intent of throwing far when it matters, but also you're not there at the same time, and it's off the cuff often, and my schedule changes, and I feel like that created some flexibility that you now use day to day, probably.
Yeah. And I think that like even the system of delivery of like writing in the notebook, and then I feel like we might have went from writing in the notebook to then those like really me writing like colorful spreadsheets, but they were still pretty ugly, to then now the program has videos in it and stuff, and eventually, you know, I know I've been saying this for a while, you're going to be able to access your program inside Peak Strength, but I think it's like, for me, I guess the system hasn't changed that much. I don't know, has it? Like, how do you feel about that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, there were some bigger differences that probably happened the first couple years, but it just went from, you know, the changes you made were ease of use changes, and like things that like having the video readily accessible. That's great for new exercises, and you probably just have a plethora of different movements that attack the same like, you know, body segments and everything. So
I guess maybe the one thing that would change with you specifically would be like, we went from lifting like 5 days a week and like crushing you to 4 days a week to then 3 days a week to now basically like 2 days a week. Especially now that you're old and you have so much gray hair.
2 is a 1.5.
Okay, before you sign off here, what is that high performance drink that you're drinking right now in front of everybody?
So I had to bring this up because this is a Mountain Dew. So I'm in Kingston, Jamaica. I'm about to compete at the Racers Grand Prix tomorrow. We walk into the athlete room. They have stacks and stacks of Mountain Dew lined up for the athletes, and they have these KFC gift certificates. I am in heaven, dude.
Oh my gosh.
This is my type of party. But I also, hey, gotta stay hydrated, so I got this too.
So to become a 3-time Olympian, what you have to do is crush KFC and Mountain Dew.
I mean, and water, but yeah.
All right. That sounds perfect. All right. Peace. All right. I don't really. Yeah. There we go. I don't know how you get out of these. Let's see. I think that if Alex. Okay. Well, that Instagram can figure itself out. I think the big thing I wanted to go back to there is, you know, that's Alex Rose, who's like been training with me since 2015. 9 years since 2015, and I wanted to share the programming aspect with Alex was literally, I would write in a composition notebook, and I would write out and write out his exercises, his workouts, his rep schemes, and then I would send him a picture of that, and that was the delivery mode, right? And I think that's sort of like the napkin strength coach. If you look at it, then it's like, okay, so you emulate somebody, then you go low risk on an alteration, then you start to go a little bit higher risk where you're like, all right, now when I write this program, I figured out that this got my bench to go up, or this got my squat or clean to go up, or snatch or whatever, or my vertical jump improved. Now I'm going to go high volume with it and just beat a dead horse. And then you start to have like a pretty big split from where you were and where you are currently. And I think that over time you start to learn structure and you start to learn what the periodization is. And I think that was the biggest thing with Alex was when I'm developing like the Olympians, and even if I'm looking at a kid who's in 5th grade or 6th grade, if I'm writing the program, it comes back to, now it's based on the biggest thing that everything's based on is, what are the foundation points? What are the benchmarks? What is everything that I know? What are these tests that I can use that will show me where this individual is? And if we improve those tests, that now they'll start to trend towards where they need to become. And that's part of like asking the athlete their vision, but then also sort of contributing your vision as a coach. And then finding now, since it's, 2008 was when we started, and then with Alex, it was 2015. And with Alex specifically, by that time, it was like, okay, it's 2015. I know what we can do to get Alex to the Olympics in 2016. He had to PR by like 6 meters or 5 meters, something like that. It was like, Alex, We got to get you to squat more, power snatch more, bench more, and then we got to fix your technique and throw more. And if we do all that stuff, you can make it to Rio. And we did it for 8 months straight, and he did it. He made it to Rio, and then made it to Tokyo, where I was in the village with him and stuff like that. And now again here in Paris. And so it's like, when you establish those foundational lifts and foundational movements, everything needs to be built on that, and you have to measure it and understand which aspect is going to improve your explosiveness, which aspect is going to improve your strength, which aspect is going to improve endurance if you're a wrestler or if you're a swimmer or somebody like that, or a marathoner, which aspect is going to improve your speed. And then that branches out. And then you have these exercises that anyone that is able-bodied can do, and then you test, and now you have a starting point. And then that's what the system gets built upon. But it has to start with the foundational movements, and it has to start with tracking them and knowing that they pay off and knowing that they're going to lead to that long-term development. So when I hear someone say, like, I don't believe in periodization. One, I hear you don't believe in measurements or foundations, like this is like the key that we need to make better. Two, I hear like, okay, so you don't have people in a system from like early on until the end of their career. Like in Alex's case, he's 32 or 33 now. And it's like, he's made his third Olympics. It's a long span of a career. And so in my personal opinion, if you're going to work with people for such a long timeline, I mean, even someone from like 6th grade to like their junior year of college is a long time. That's looking at like 7 or 8 years. There's got to be levels of where they're at with those foundations. And even to the point where it's like, okay, we know, let's just say with back squat, we know back squat is the movement that does this. And if we get their back squat from 405 to 455, that's like what is that? Like a 5% or 4.5% improvement. Or no, I guess it would be even more than that. That would be a 10% improvement, right? So if we know that we can get a 405 squat to 455, we should also know that that might improve their vertical. It might improve their sprints. And like, but to get that squat to go up, we have to know what'll feed the squat now. And so when you start to periodize things, now you can see those other movements and all those other areas. And I think that for me, it's like what experience led to these ideas, right? What helps you as a coach? And I think the biggest thing is like, as a coach, noticing trends. As a coach, noticing trends with athletes. And then also like when you're looking at laying out how you program. When I originally started to program, I would have Mr. Yoder's program here. He was my strength coach. And I would just sort of copy exactly what he would do. Okay. And I did that, probably for like the first 3 to 4 years. Then when I went to college, I did it with my college coaches stuff. And then when I started to play around with low risk like experiments, well, then I would go from, okay, if I have this program here, and then I have, now what I do, or at this point then would be like, okay, I have this program here and I have this other person's program here. So now I have like 2 resources I'm looking at. Then I went into like how far out, like I would start to think like in Alex's case, I wouldn't want Alex to be the individual who, throws and he makes it to Rio Olympics in 2016. And then because I don't believe in periodization, 3 weeks beforehand, he's doing 5 sets of 7 back squats, like maxing out his back squats. He's so sore he can't even throw anymore. So now it's like, okay, well, if that would be the case and I don't use periodization, I wouldn't acknowledge that, right? So then it's like, okay, well, now in that instance, I'm asking how far out are they from a competitive scenario? How far out are they from their peak? How far out are they from their competition? And then so then I'm going, okay, now I work backwards. I go, okay, these exercises help this athlete, in this case Alex, who's he's 330 pounds, he can dunk a basketball, right? So that would be like an explosive thrower. But then if I'm looking at a linebacker, I can go, okay, well, these exercises help Jan Johnson, who played in the NFL, who also went to Penn State. These exercises help Jan. So that can be like the benchmarks for Jan, right? Okay, well, these exercises helped Pete Renda, who was a Division III All-American. It helped, or a Division I All-American who got third at NCAAs. These exercises helped Nick Wazowski, who was a 2-time world bronze medalist. So now I can build out these foundations on results. So then the next thing, okay, well, these exercises, these benchmark exercises, this is helping me with a lacrosse player like Ryan Tarafenko, Division I All-American, okay? Christian Slode, Division I soccer All-American. Now I can look at that and say, okay, these are the foundation exercises here. When I trained, Margot Gear, who's now the swim coach at Alabama, I spent hours on the phone with her like, hey, what exercises do you think we need to have? So then it's like, all right, the benchmarks from Margot. Okay, this is what I think will help me. And then I put in, okay, I think this will help you. Then the next aspect, okay, well, what if we have an endurance individual, somebody who's going to run a marathon or a distance runner or somebody like that? Okay, well, we still need to look at how to help them perform better in their endurance work and create those exercises for their sport. So then it's, okay, now when I'm writing a program, it leads into, so literally if I write a program on this day at this moment, and which I'm going to do, I'm going to write, I'll give you like an example of like a swim program or something like that. You guys can comment or vote on what you want me to write a program for. Now I can go, I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, what are the benchmarks for that sport? Okay, well, first I really am saying, what's the sport? Then I look at what's the sport depth. Are they in depth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And that means for me, how much are they like a power athlete? Are they like a football strength, like a football type athlete, which would be like strength and power? Are they like a combat athlete? Are they like a constant go, like a soccer player, lacrosse player? Or are they like a distance, like true endurance, right? So those are the 5 depths. So then I go, okay, after that, I establish the depth that they're in. Then I have to establish, okay, what is the priority of explosive training, of strength training, of speed work, and of endurance for each depth, because it's different across each realm, because I'm looking at it from that perspective. Then I look at how far out are they? Okay, how far out are they from their peak? Then I look at, okay, what reps and sets should we be, what types of reps and sets should we be using for these peaks? I don't want to use myo reps when I'm 1 week out from a big competition. Okay, I also don't want to use myo reps like the first week of training. I want to use myo reps like week 6 through 12. And we have to establish that in a model. Otherwise, we're just throwing shit against the wall. And so we have to do that. We have to sit down and figure that out. And so we have resources that we're looking at a benchmark now. I'm looking at benchmarks. I'm looking at sport depths. I'm looking at reps and sets. I'm looking at how far are they out. And then I'm looking at how advanced are they as an athlete. Is it a 6th grader or is it somebody who's trying to become a professional athlete? Because we've got them all. Like I'm in the trenches here. Like, I think that's the one thing I was talking to my wife about this last night. I'm the idiot strength coach who's like doing these lives, but I'm like in the trenches, we are training. I'm training 6th grade kids to throw far. I'm training professional throwers to make it to their 3rd Olympics this year. Like that's the gambit of everything that we're trying to do. So we're trying to help you guys then, obviously with that hands-on experience. So then that leads into like that basic split for a typical week of training would be dependent upon what level they're in. Typically it's going to be like, hey, a collegiate football player, we might do speed day first. And that's where some of these changes are happening now is we might do a speed day first. Then we're going to do an upper body day. Then we're going to do a leg day. And then we're going to do a jumps and athlete day at the end of the week. Okay. That's with somebody who's a football player who's one of the best football players in the country. That's what we're going to do. Okay. But then we might work back and say, okay, well, a high school football player, we might do speed day on day 3, but do a leg day on day 1 and upper body day on day 2. So now we're looking at it a little bit differently based off of our experience, based off of what we're learning. And so I think it's an interesting and fun thing for me to experiment through. And I just saw you're in here. Sorry, I haven't really been checking in there. Change up the protein source in the shakes. I'm just looking at some of these questions. Should we have Alex on a live stream in the future? 100%. There's only 9 votes and you all said yes. That's funny. That's because Alex is such a good guy. Can you do football or lacrosse? I could do football or lacrosse. So, we have this in-season weightlifting training exercise and healthy male handball. Like this, actually, I'll do this real quickly because this is another aspect around periodization that I think we have to understand is that, you read this in-season weightlifting for healthy handball players. How many people are handball athletes? Like not a lot, right? I don't really know anybody. Maybe I've talked to a couple online that train handball, but mainly it's not. But what you can do then with the sport depths is you can look at, okay, what would handball be? Handball is a sport depth 4. Okay. So now there's research. It's the same thing in this month's Journal of Strength and Conditioning. I don't have it on me. I think I might have moved it over to my backpack. There's a whole article on Gaelic football. Well, I don't live in Ireland, right? So what am I going to do with it? Well, if I read it and I recognize that it's all about energy usage, it's going to inform my sport depth system. So now I'm going to read the sport depth system and I'm going to go, okay, Gaelic football, sport depth 4. Now what else is in sport depth 4? Well, based off of the research from the Gaelic system, it's similar for lacrosse, it's similar for soccer, and we can train people similarly, not identical, but pretty close. And that's where with handball, the study is assessing what's the impact of 8 weeks bi-weekly in-season weightlifting training on strength, throwing ability, and body comp. Okay, so they're looking at strength, how hard do they throw, what's their body comp, right? And so then you can go in and you can look at, I'm going to try and pull it up real quickly so you guys can see it on YouTube, is that, all right, we're going to look here, and what does it say, right? Like, all right, 20 players, they had 20 of them, they're about 21 years old. They were randomly allocated between experimental group and control groups. They measured their 1 rep max strength, which included the bench press, the pullover, a max out on pullover. Sounds like javelin throwers. Snatch, crazy. They actually measured snatch and clean and jerk. Throwing velocity was investigated by standing, running, and jump throws. So that's pretty typical for the sport. And then the power of the upper limbs was estimated from the total distance of 3K med ball overhead throw. Muscle volumes were estimated anthropometrically. Training sessions comprised 3 to 4 sets of explosive weightlifting exercise at 75 to 90%. Significant interaction times were found for all strength and throwing variables, time and group, ranging from pullover with the largest between group difference and effect size for the medicine ball throw and the smallest for the standing shot put. So significant interaction effects were also detected for upper limb with an almost 20% of muscle volume. It can be concluded that 8 weeks of bi-weekly in-season weightlifting training yielded substantial increases of muscle volume, maximal strength of the upper limbs, and ball throwing velocity. So what does this tell me for periodization? Dude, train twice a day for 8 weeks. You'll be okay. Or try twice a week. Train twice a week. And then if you have a schedule that's weaker, you train 3 days. Okay. But this is telling me, okay, sport depth 4, you guys in sport depth 4, we can go train twice a week when we're in season. And the wild part is that we're using all the data here in the papers, all of the experience here, okay, at the gym with who we work with, all of the coaches that we talk with, and then that's how we're building out the system. And it's been being built. Like it started in 2008, and it's been expedited, bump forward. You deal with somebody like Alex who can provide great feedback and make your system better. And then you have football players that challenge you, or field hockey players, a softball player right now, that's super, super challenging as an athlete because they can push so well. They can get to that next level so quickly. So then you have to develop a better model of periodization, or at least a more advanced model of periodization, while still dialing in the beginner model of your periodization. When I hear someone say they don't believe in periodization, they can't get normal people, very normal human beings, beginners, to get better. Because the thing is that the better you get at periodization, the more you can get someone who's in 6th grade to do an advanced movement by 8th grade. So then by the time they're in 10th grade, they're even doing more advanced movements, and then they're elite by the time they're a senior, right? They're doing things that they're challenging themselves. They're getting uncomfortable with positions. But they're learning. Their body's learning. Their brain's learning. Their mentality is growing because of the challenges that you're presenting them. And I think that that's like some of the real easy stuff behind all this, and to go off a little bit, is that, one of the things that we're doing, Peak Strength 2.0 is in the process of being released. It's going to come out in like middle of July. It's our strength training app is going to come out with 2.0. Currently it is out and we're updating it. And the cool part is that we're going to put in all this research, all of this timelines now that we've laid things out on the back end even clearer. That's getting updated with speed and endurance and things like that. And it's going to be easier to identify where your peak is, where you're out of season or in season. And that's stuff that's going to be really, really freaking cool. That is just absolutely phenomenal. And if you're in there right now, you're going to see it. I mean, you're already seeing the updates happening currently. Also, if you guys, a whole nother side, head over to the Garage Strength podcast. It's when we put out our lives on Tuesdays. Last week we put out that live with Michael Drock. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm trying to get I've got a couple people in the shoot right now that we're trying to get. I want to get Christian Thibodeau on again, and I want to get a couple other guys on. Let me know who you guys would want to see on an actual full-length Garage Strength podcast. All right, so if we get into building out a basic program, I'm actually going to show you here. What I want to do is I'm going to come back over here. Okay, so this is like the program from last week, right? So we showed you, I think this is a pretty basic program. Now, if I'm looking at this, so there we got our nice little date, right? Okay, so if I look at this, let's say we layout of the week, and let's say it's football, okay? I want to do swimming, but let's just say it's football. So we'll go football. Okay, workout type. So let's say I'll go day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And so what this is literally, like, for me, my favorite way to think through this. I'm going to change this part here. Okay, so let's go let's move this guy over and this guy here. Okay, so day 1, let's call it speed day. Okay, and this is something that's different right now, which is freaking cool. Upper here. Okay, then let's go heavy leg day, leg power here. Then this day, so this is where you could go like hypertrophy day there, and then athlete day. This is pretty much what we're doing, athlete day and then speed day here. So this is essentially how we're laying out like our collegiate system currently, okay? So what I do first is I go that's the overarching like top down look, okay? Top down. I'm just going to throw that up there. Now the next step that I do is, okay, now if I go into, I guess we could call it that micro view of system. Okay, now let's go like this. I'm going to put that up there. And this is where we go here. Let's go. If I would come up here, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the structure. Okay, program structure. Okay, let's say exercise type. Okay, so typically here it would be like first exercise. Well, let's just say warm up, exercise 1, exercise 2, exercise 3, finishing. Okay, so let's go like this. You do your garage strength warm up, which we should make a poll. I've had this warm up that I've been using quite a bit lately with my athletes that I'm training. I feel like we should just like put that out as like the garage strength warm up, so that you guys can know what's the garage strength warm up that we can just go in and any sport can do. I remember, I think it was Joe DeFranco had his like Limber 11 or something like that, and I've often thought we should be doing that. Okay, let me know if you want that. So this is where I would put high speed, priority, most cases, technical coordination. Okay, so this would be technical coordination. So this, absolute strength. This, hypertrophy weaknesses. Okay. This would be, let's say, trunk work, maybe even mobility here. Okay, so that's like the if I'm laying out like inside of this live, right? So you guys are watching. This is literally like the first step is to say, okay, after you identify the key questions here, I'm actually going to put these questions up. I don't think you can see them yet. If I put these questions up here, okay, so I'll go, what is the level of the athlete? You know, how old or advanced are they in the sport? Okay, and really, how long have they been training is the most important question. Okay, so you say, how long have they been training? Right? What's their main sport? Football, track, swimming, baseball, whatever. That's what we're really going to try and train for. Okay. What is their sport depth? Okay. So now we went through what their sport depth is. And then the next question is, what are the benchmarks for their sport depth or their sport? Okay. Then you look at how far out from competition or the season. And so these are like the main questions that I like to ask myself when I'm building out a program is like, okay, these are like the real consistent questions. All of these questions have to be asked. Then you have to look at it and say, okay, from a top-down perspective, this could be a week's layout. Okay, then you go into the next thing. Okay, well, this is like what the program structure looks like. Okay, and then the next thing would be like, what would be the priority? Okay, and I actually wanted to point this out. Even in here, okay, you can see high speed priority. If it's a speed day, we're going to sprint, okay? If it's a change of direction day, we're going to do shuttles or something like shuttles, right? It's a similar movement. And so now you go back here and you go, okay, what type of exercises happen on a speed day? And you're going starts, short sprints, change of direction, stuff like that, right? So now you go there. Then the next thing, okay, presses, pull-ups, etc., right? Pretty clear upper body, leg power day. Okay, we're doing weightlifting movements, squats, lunges, right? Something like that. Hypertrophy, big compound movements, and bodybuilding, okay? Love bodybuilding, love leg extension, love leg curls, all those things. And then athlete day would be plyometrics. It could be sprint work, could be reflexive work, anything like that. Okay. Now the cool part is that you can take all this, and then you can see progressions that we have. Okay, and you can go, okay, I want to build a speed day. So off of speed day, these are the exercises that we have in speed day. And now, based off of this level of the athlete, we can work backwards and give them this. Okay? And then when they get to the next point or the next level, they sort of work up to the next level of exercises for that. If we're looking at an upper body day, okay, I got a kid who has a terrible bench. Well, we got to get their bench better. So what should they do? Well, they should bench. They should incline bench. They should decline bench. They could do dips. They could do clap push-up, all that stuff. But now that has to fit into the day. But you know that at least it's on this day. Then you do that with the leg power day. Okay, their vertical jump stinks, so their broad jump stinks. Okay, well now we know they got a snatch or clean or hang clean or two box snatch or two box clean or power clean or front squat, whatever. Or the front squat would go into their squat version. And now you start to assign exercises specifically to these days and to the exercise type leads to exercises, and then exercises leads to reps and sets. And ultimately, the number one thing that determines everything is the rep, right? Like the rep is really like what the training adaptation is that you're trying to get. And I think that's the big thing we have to think through is like, if we're trying to get a training adaptation, we have to organize everything. And if we don't organize it, then we're never going to truly know what works the best. And dude, I didn't organize a lot of my training and I had a lot of success. So like when you hear someone say like, well, you don't necessarily have to periodize, I'm not saying that they're wrong. You don't have to necessarily like super organize everything, but like, and you can do that and still be a good coach. But if you want to be the absolute dog coach possible, you've got to organize your shit. Like you just have to do it. and then you start to see trends on like short-limbed individuals, long-limbed individuals, explosive individuals, non-explosive individuals, heavier individuals, lighter individuals. Like now you see all those trends and you can actually put it with the data instead of just saying, meh, I think I see this. We don't actually know if you're not measuring somebody's broad jump, somebody's clean, and you're not actually like understanding where that fits. And what's crazy with this that I love is that, we would take this now, and I would lay out this aspect on screen, and then we start to get into ratios. We look at the benchmarks. We look at the percentage of their training that they need to go towards endurance or whatever, and where are they at, and we can see these ratios, and then that's where you can get really lost in the weeds. But when you're training beginners, you just have to understand who the individual is, okay, and where we're trying to go. And the ironic part here is like, honestly, as a strength coach, at the beginning of the day, you just have to start with emulation. Like, just look at a program and emulate it, and then you can build out off of that, and then you can start to make these adjustments. So that's the way it is. That's the way it rolls, and I think that's like the fun part about this. Okay, so Sean, thank you for that. Sean just said, what age would you start kids on Olympic lifting in general? Sean, I would say honestly, we have a couple kids have come in 5th, 6th grade. They start snatching like day one. Day one. I do use contrast training, Dark the teleporter. Day one, I would have them do like a dumbbell snatch or a snatch with a technique stick or a snatch with a barbell, like immediately day one. It's funny because we have a shot putter. If you guys follow me on Instagram, we have a thrower. She's 12. She just turned 12 like 2 months ago. And I said I'm going to train her for like 5 years with just 10 exercises, like basically a snatch or a snatch variation, a clean variation, a front squat, a back squat, a single leg squat, plyometrics, bench press, pull-ups, and then that's it. And then her throwing. And like you can see she snatched literally the first day. You can see she cleaned the first day. So it's fun to do things like that because now I can see what's really going to pay off with her long term. So and that's what I did with my son as well. I will say that too. So I hope that helped. All right, I gotta head down to coach. I'm gonna head out, and I really appreciate you guys. Owen just asked a great question. I've got to share those benchmarks because I do want to provide that with everybody here. Benchmarks across sports. I'm gonna head out though for the time being. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.